Hello and welcome to Your City. I'm your host, Lynn Turner Fitzgerald. City Administrator Chris Kukulski is joining us today. I want to thank you, Chris, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we've got a legislative session this month in January. And every year, every session, the city gets together and they decide where we're going to move this legislative session. So that's really what I wanted to ask you about today.
Awesome.
Is some of the priorities that the city's looking at, hoping to achieve.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so at a very high level, it's public safety first and foremost. Mm-hmm. You know, the criminal justice system is the most complex issue I've dealt with in my 30-year local government career. Every day there's interaction between the City of Billings, Yellowstone County, the state of Montana, and the federal government relative to the criminal justice system. So safety, improving collaboration, improving accountability, sharing of resources, all top. That's our number one priority as a city, and it'll be our number one priority in this legislative session.
Okay.
There's some more issues. Housing.
Well,
yeah, you want to stick?
Yeah, can I ask you about public safety? Because we've been talking about public safety for, I don't know, 10 years?
Yeah.
In this city, maybe longer. But so what can the legislature do to improve public safety in Billings?
Well, there are a couple of direct areas where they have, and I want to say thank you to them. So coming out of the pandemic, one of the areas the state changed its funding formula on was the funding of public defenders.
Oh, okay.
The system was absolutely clogged up, right? Every time you're innocent until proven guilty, you have access to a public defender. The state was hugely underfunded in that area, and so cases would just sit and linger and clog up the system. Without that proper level of funding out of the state for that service that they were providing. So that is one critical area that will always remain important to the system. Incarceration, unfortunately, is a huge area, and it's if you talk to an officer on the street, they will tell you unequivocally it is the single biggest impact to them effectively doing their job. Yes, it's true that the Yellowstone County Detention Center is Yellowstone County's. However, again, a number of criminals end up and need to be in the state prison. And when the state doesn't have the capacity to deal with their own inmates, they leave them in county jails. When they're in county jails, there's not room for the individual who our officers arrest. So that is absolutely a direct area of impact on us locally.
Are we unique in that way, Chris, around the state of Montana? Or are there other overcrowded jails and situations like that?
We are not unique.
Okay.
I can't say this definitively, but I would speculate based on being the largest city in Montana, based on the crime challenges we face, we probably have it more acutely than anyone else. But I do know for a fact it is an issue in many, many counties. I suspect all of the 7 trade areas. During my tenure in Bozeman, we needed to replace the jail. It finally happened after 15 years of working at it.
Yeah.
And it has some of those challenges too. So I don't believe it's unique to us. I think we probably though have one of, if not the largest challenge around it, as we're a service provider for all the things we are excited. We love when people come for their medical needs and to shop and cultural arts, but it also is the hub for services relative to the criminal justice system as well.
Right. Solution? I mean, is money the solution?
Well, it's not exclusively the solution. I think the two bookends is you've got the jail that will, and the state prison system that will need to grow its capacity. And that probably is primarily a money thing and a resource thing relative to people to work in those places. I think the other bookend is prevention, right? We know that family violence, we know that substance abuse absolutely feed into ultimately the risk of multi-generational criminal activity.
Right.
And sadly for us, that is what our prosecutors tell me they see on a very regular basis. And so we have been, again, working with the state of Montana. We've got, Billings has got the first, and I believe only, Family Justice Center, Northern Lights Family Justice Center. It's a best practice, evidence-based, national model to invest in those families and children and try to give them the services they need and break that cycle of violence that tends to feed into, not always, it just is a much higher propensity.
Well, none of these are overnight solutions.
Yes, no, they're not.
Obviously. So, in the meantime, are there things that we can do to ease the situation?
Well, our voters were so gracious to us, right? Twice back to back, they supported public safety levies at the local level, and that gave us resources at both law enforcement, prosecution, court. We doubled our from 1 to 2 municipal courts, and code enforcement just out in our neighborhoods. That was a significant impact. At the local level, the most important thing we can do, been working in partnership with Yellowstone County on it, is the expansion of the Yellowstone County Detention Facility. You know, we've got a short-term one component, fix or impact with the temporary. All of a sudden, I'm losing my.
No, I know what you're talking about.
It's a short-term hold facility.
Yes, yes.
So both the city and the county are using cash. Didn't need to go ask for higher taxes. Use cash to build this short-term hold facility.
Right.
What that is going to provide is the officer the opportunity to, if that individual needs to be incarcerated, they can get incarcerated and held until they see that judge the next morning, 2 days, but no more than 72 hours. So within 72 hours, that individual is going to be either remanded to the detention facility or out to the community. So that is an immediate impact that's under construction as we speak. We know, though, we're going to be coming to the voters to figure out what's the right size jail as well as diversion investment programs, facilities for our community. And that when that bond issue comes out, we've got to have support from our local community for that. Because like I said, for 6 years straight, the officers have told me, we really appreciate your advocacy for getting us more resources, but we're on a catch and release program right now.
And the criminals know that.
And the criminals know that.
They know there's no repercussions.
Absolutely. So.
Well, good. It's a start.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, housing. Oh, housing.
Not as complex as the criminal justice system, but something that the city is not accustomed to being in the middle of, right? It's a market. We're a free market-driven system. And so, and yet we face a scenario that some of our neighboring communities in the West have dealt with for maybe 10 years, 15 years, but is frankly new to Billings, and that is that housing has become unaffordable for young professionals starting in life, let alone, you know, folks who are working 2 or 3 jobs, part-time or minimum wage, trying to make ends meet. So as a community, figuring that, what is the city's, what's the local government's role in helping to create a marketplace or the infrastructure, the opportunity for the private sector to thrive in that area.
Well, has the local government ever faced that question before?
Well, around the country, absolutely. But Billings, I would say, ever's a really long time, but I don't think in recent history, not at the level that we are today. Right. We've always had hundreds, not a few thousand people on waiting list for, the lowest, those who struggle the most to get into housing. But now, it's about anybody who doesn't come into the system with cash out of someplace else or whatever.
And it impacts the entire cycle in the city. Professionals who move here can't afford to live here, so they'll find someplace else to go.
Absolutely. So as we're hiring officers, as we're hiring teachers, as we're employing people across the whole economy, housing is critical.
What do you think this legislature can do about that?
Excuse me.
Sure.
They made some huge changes the last legislative session. We're working through that relative to land use planning. So the community is writing a new community plan. That plan will function very different than it did just a few years ago. If a property owner or developer wants to do something on that piece of property that's consistent with that plan, you won't see them in front of the city council. They will have administrative approval through our community development office, through my office, that if they're consistent with the law, with the plan, they're off and running.
Well, doesn't that involve rezoning in
It does.
certain properties?
It does to a degree. So we're at that high level of updating those plans.
Yeah.
We're doing a couple of big neighborhood plans, West and Heights, and then this area. One area I think specific to the state that maybe also could make a difference is I'm told by the architecture community that their liability insurers won't let them touch designing condominiums.
What? Why?
The liability is too strong. Apparently, you design this condo, and 45 years later or 60 years later, when one falls down like it did in Florida, everybody wants to sue possibly the designers. My speculation, but again, talking to architects, they will say that's an area that they just don't even touch. Because I asked when I got to Billings, why aren't we building more condos? In Bozeman, we couldn't build them fast enough.
Right.
But here, there are almost none. And why do I care about that? How do we get people into home ownership?
Right.
I mean, we have multiple issues. Some is just getting into housing, but the American dream or prosperity in America, so much has been developed over the past century out of the value of one's home.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, since
all part of that American dream.
Yeah, and so the inability, small, older homes are commonly $250,000, 350,000.
I'm aware, yes.
Yeah, that for us, frankly, 30 years ago when my wife and I bought that first house, it was a fraction of what I see our kids.
Yeah, I think
So-
I spent $40,000 on my first
53
wife.
for us. And so in this regard, I have talked to a few legislators about some of those kind of ideas. How can we help people get into housing and start to build equity other than exclusively single-family detached homes just because of the price?
Do you think there's any federal help available?
There's a little. Typically, that tends to be on the infrastructure side of the house.
Okay.
Water line, sewer. There's a significant cost into housing, into building the roads, water, sewer, stormwater, things of that nature. So that's a focus area for us. Housing. Another one is just flat out economic development. Right. The most important part of a quality of life is having a job of which to provide for yourself and your family.
Yeah.
And so we have a wonderful partnership with Big Sky Economic Development, Steve Arviskow and his team, and the state, I think, is a real partner relative to, especially at the national level. We know people are interested in Montana and coming to Montana. Well, we'd love you to our people to be able to be entrepreneurs and start businesses here, or relocate and start a business here. Things that build our economic base to help pay for these various services and things.
And I think the components of the economy have changed over time and will continue to change now with all the high-tech stuff going on. It's a different world.
It is a different world, and that's certainly, we've seen that change, and that there are people, I think, there's some in our generation and a little bit in my parents' age that don't understand how is it that so many people are coming in, and where are they making their living? You used to think of, they went to the refinery, you could see the location,
Some brick and
they went
mortar
to the
thing,
hospital.
yeah.
Today, they may not go to that corporate office but a couple times a month, but they're still making a very healthy salary and compensation, and we want them to be able to and want to live and do business here, as well as maybe start that branch.
Yeah. Well-
expansion or their innovative idea.
Nice contribution to the whole
Absolutely.
community.
Absolutely.
Okay, so is the idea to try to attract more of these entrepreneurs
Well, I
or
think that
more opportunities?
more opportunities. 80% of all new jobs tend to be from existing industry. So in this case, it's not nearly as much going out there trying to woo companies to Billings as it is trying to help the people who are living here
Yeah,
create those businesses. Look at Rock 31 downtown.
right.
So we're really trying to grow our own, but that in and of itself tends to attract folks who are interested in being somewhere where they feel they've got that kind of support, where they've
Right.
got
Yeah.
entrepreneurs communicating with each other, helping each other, and who doesn't want to live where you can see the
I know.
Beartooth Mountains and the Yellowstone River and
Well, so far I'm seeing a connection between each of these priorities.
Absolutely.
They're all linked together, aren't they?
they are.
The infrastructure.
Yeah, the base of it is we
Didn't
don't
Montana get a D?
probably.
Yeah.
I think you would. Our city would not get a D. This is
No.
an area where for many decades before my tenure and during my tenure that we've invested in core infrastructure, transportation system, water system, wastewater system. But the things we've really had to up our game in is the airport.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We did that $60 million complete replacement of the front side of the airport there, and now we have expansion capacity from our airlines to come in and out. And by the way, those customers on those planes are residents, but they're also business interests. They're folks who maybe came here on vacation or are coming here on vacation or visiting, go, wow, I'd like to start a business there. So there too are two new reservoirs in our water plant. We're adding the first, our second water plant to
That's the
the
one
city
on
on
the
the west end.
Okay.
That's the second water plant we will have
Wow.
over 100 years. And the necessity to have that $150 million investment that we don't want anybody to have to think about, right? They turn on their water in the morning,
Yeah.
brush their teeth, get ready for the day, flush the toilet, jump on that street. We don't want them having to think about the fact that all that stuff is well taken care of. In fact, I just heard a number, $7 billion. What our Public Works Director, Debbie Melling, just shared with me the other day, that's the new number. That's the value of the infrastructure that we have here in our city, and that
Wow.
might not include the airport, because it maybe was Debbie's area
Yeah.
of strictly public works.
What about maintaining it, though?
So maintaining is critical,
Yeah.
right? And that's really what people are paying their water bills
Yeah.
and their wastewater bills and their sewer bills, is to maintain that system. So we know a pipe under the ground will last about 100 years, and we want to replace that pipe at the 99th year. We don't want to do it too early, but we don't want to do it after it breaks 6 times, floods people's homes, damages private property. And so we are on, I think, about a 7-year plan to get caught up on replacing enough pipe that it matches that life expectancy. So we do have some areas of improvement there that we're working towards. Same on the pavement side. And we know that every dollar we invest in maintaining a street, we can avoid $8 to $10 reconstructing a street if we just let it go and just wait until we just can't stand it anymore and have to send a crew and they're completely reconstructing. So infrastructure is huge, and it's an area where the state has some grant dollars that it helps with, pretty minor. Most of it really falls on our shoulders as a local community, but anytime we can get access to state or federal funding, we're trying to do that to help our community.
Yeah. Our bridges are okay, mostly?
Bridges, yes, our bridges now, that one is a county responsibility.
That's right.
But I think we're in pretty good shape there. One of the more difficult areas for us is stormwater. So it's one of the changes that happened this past year is your stormwater fee moved from your property tax bill to your monthly utility bill. And stormwater, we're sitting on about $70 million worth of backlogged work that needs to be done in the stormwater area.
Okay.
And it's nothing anyone gets excited about until we get a heavy rain,
Yep.
and then you get a flood, and again, property damage takes place. If you remember the washout we had just last spring, I think it was, maybe 2 springs ago, there behind the old Costco, trying to think of what the street there is.
Yeah, I do, vaguely, yes. Yeah.
But, you get an event like that, it wipes out that culvert, the road is closed.
Yeah.
We're sending an emergency crew out there, hiring contractors. We get it open within 24 hours, but now we got a construction project that cost several $1 million and negatively affecting things for several weeks or months.
Yeah.
So those are kind of things we're trying to avoid. And really at the base of all of this is we've got to do something to change the tax structure in Montana, and that cannot be done at the local level. That is absolutely a power and authority that resides in the state of Montana. And so our plea is to shift the burden from property owners to users.
Are we talking about a sales tax?
It's some form
Okay, good
of
luck.
Yeah.
They have been so stubborn about never putting in a sales tax in this state.
I know.
Could this be the year?
Unfortunately, I doubt it.
Okay.
I think we have to get to a crisis point, but I don't know what more crisis we need to get. Remember
Right.
that housing conversation?
Yep.
For homeowners, well, for everybody in the system, they're being affected by their property taxes being high. That adds to that monthly bill, and I'm afraid that until that...
Well, just last year, there was a pretty significant hike.
Yep, 2 years ago, it jumped up about 20-some%.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that will drive possibly the state to change that. What we're advocating for at the local level, trying to work with other cities and partners, is if you would give us the same local option tax authority, small sales tax not to exceed 3 cents, voter approved, sunsets, and all of the collected money would reduce property taxes. So no growth in government services. So it's not
No.
going to solve our problem of funding any of these things. But if it would simply shift some of that burden, we got about 2.7 to 3 million visitors in Billings,
Right.
and 20,000 citizens.
Right.
So, I say you don't need an accountant.
What would that process look like, Chris? So it sounds like what's in place in the small resort towns,
Yep.
the resort tax.
Yep.
So it's implemented, let's say, in this year, this month. At what point do property tax payers see a relief?
The first year. So
Immediately?
immediately, because if the law, but this can only be done in Helena.
Yeah.
So the law does not allow any community over 5,500 to even have this conversation. And when I say instead of using a minimum of 10% for tax relief, that's what the statute requires right now, a minimum of 10%. I think Whitefish is at 25%. I'm suggesting change the law to get rid of the population cap and require that all of what's collected be used for property tax relief. So,
But it stays within that
yeah.
community.
Well, I think
No?
I think we're going to get a little bit more complicated here,
Okay.
unfortunately. I think realistically that would never fly at the legislative level because people would perceive that they are going to get hit when they come to Billings to shop and do business, and we're going to be the only beneficiaries. So in my mind, you would share. There'd be a percentage of that tax relief, that tax revenue that would be shared with Yellowstone County. They would have to use it to reduce their property taxes. There would be a portion shared with a whole region of, I don't know how many counties that would be our kind of economic impact area around Billings. They would get a percent, and they have to use it for tax relief. So your rancher, your farmer, 100 miles from Billings
Yeah, it's going
would
to feel it too.
see a tax reduction by something like this. I'd see a lower property tax bill from Yellowstone County because we are all Yellowstone County residents.
Yeah.
and I'd see a lower bill from the city because it would lower. Now, I hesitate to talk much more about it because we've been talking about this for decades.
Well, and we're out of time anyway, so
So-
we gotta, no, but after the session, please come back and let's talk about the process, how it went, what's gonna happen in
Happy to.
Yellowstone County.
Happy to, as well as in the middle of it, if
Sure.
if there's something really cooking that works along
Perfect.
these areas.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us here on Your City. We will see you next time.